And we are live. Hi, everybody. I'm Lynne McTaggart, and welcome back to Healing Conversations. And I am thrilled today to welcome a mother-daughter act. And I love this because we also work with our two daughters who work with us with our health publications. But I'm here with the incomparable Donna Eden, who almost needs no introduction, but she is one of the real early pioneers in energy medicine. I mean, from the 1970s, and she's been, teaching energy medicine of a variety of forms since then, and touched the hearts and minds of millions of people around the world. And then I have her daughter, Dondi, who grew up and absorbed all of this and also grew up in showbiz and energy medicine. It's kind of put them together in a sense because she's a member of the Screen Actors Guild. She's also an award-winning author and public speaker, and she's an acclaimed teacher, dancer, actress, multiple sort of multitasker in so many ways. And we're going to talk to you today about energy medicine because they come from one perspective, I come from another perspective, but we're both really interested in systems of medicine that defy the usual and traditional, and when we say traditional, the modern paradigm. So for those of you on Donna Eden's pages who don't know me, my name is Lynne McTaggart, and I am a internationally best-selling author for books like The Field, The Intention Experiment, The Bond, and my latest book, The Power of Eight. And I run a weird thing called Intention Experiments, testing the power of thought to heal the world, as well as putting people into small groups and seeing how they healed. And more about that later. So, okay, you two, I'm going to ask you, what is your definition of energy medicine and why it works? Let's just dive in that way.
Well, energy is everything. I mean, everything that appears solid is really a lattice work of force fields. And so we human beings aren't solid. We also are lattice works of force fields and energy systems. And those energy systems run us. Whenever you see movement, that's energy. I mean, it animates our bodies. And what our ancient ancestors knew for thousands upon thousands of years is how to move energy, to heal themselves, to get more vitality, to just be in rhythm with the earth. And they noticed that everything that grew and the oceans that move, everything has a rhythm, and so do human beings. And when you can witness the energies that are moving in your body and find out where things are stuck, you can heal yourself. And it's the best. It's the energy medicine is the oldest. It is the most natural and organic. It is the safest energy there is because it's what runs the world and runs the universe. That's it in a nutshell.
That's it in a nutshell. Absolutely. And that's what's so interesting about this is we're talking really about an old paradigm that is a new paradigm for us now in the 21st century, because we have grown up with a particular story defining us as, electrical signaling and chemical processes, basically. That's our scientific story, that we are all individual, very self-contained entities, operating according to fixed laws in time and space. And the new science is really reflecting the old wisdom to demonstrate we're not that. We are a teeming and vibrating packet of energy, talking to other energy systems. And once you start thinking about yourself in those terms, then you start thinking in terms of a medicine that would address not chemicals and electrical processes, but
Right.
shifting this energy. So what about you, Dondi? What about, why is the five elements a big part of this?
Well, let me just say hi, Mom. Hi, Lynn. And I will talk about the five elements, but I do also want to touch on what Mom said about energy and growing up with energy, the awareness of it, the knowledge of it, and growing up with Mom who could see energies. I feel so lucky that she taught me to really come into the world with my energies healthy. And so she would raise my sister and I saying things like, Dondi, your energy affects other people. When you're really down and you're really blue, that's because somebody else's energy affected you. And so early on, I saw that, oh my gosh, we're all connected. And I think even more right now, that's so important. And I have to tell myself this all the time because I can get really stuck. And I have to remind myself of my mom's words and that we are all connected. And I think, Lynn, what is so incredible about your work and the power of 8 and intention and Eden energy medicine is that we really are bringing that healthy connection back together. So the five elements, what they are is they are an energy system in the bigger picture of Eden energy medicine and all energy medicine and the work we do. It's an ancient Chinese healing modality, both physically and emotionally. It's also a personality type system. But as Mom always says, and I'll let you talk, Mom, more about this because I don't want to speak for you, but Mom always says it's your individual vibration. You have a unique individual vibration. And how are you going to bring that to the world? Are you going to bring it with compassion? Are you going to bring it with an open heart and connection? Or are you going to bring it with all of the ego and the personality muckety muck? And are you going to get stuck with that? Or are you going to really bring yourself into the world by working on yourself first and coming with an open heart? So the five elements is simply this modality, again, that helps us all connect, that helps us to get along better, that helps us to understand each other and why people do what they do, why people say what they say when we're saying to ourselves, oh my gosh, why did he do that? Why did she say that? I can't believe that. I wouldn't do that. You bring the energy systems in the five elements and you see that, oh my gosh, we are all energy beings and we can all work better together. Not saying, why would he do that? But I understand why he did that. And now let's all come together and connect.
I I love that, and I love the idea that people have personality types based on energy, which is again an old and now new way of thinking about things. And I'm going to just talk about something really important that you mentioned, which is that your energy is going out there to the world. Now, as you both know, I've been looking at the power of thoughts for now many years and the fact that thoughts are an actual something that affects physical matter. And I always like to say, we're leaky buckets. We are leaking out all the time. So this energy we're talking about is also and hugely encapsulated in our thoughts. And as you say, if you're not feeling well, your energy, as Donna was saying, your energy is way down. Well, not only is that affecting you, but that's beaming out 24/7 to the world. And that's very much what I do is look at how our thoughts are affecting our bodies, are affecting everybody else's bodies, and how that's affecting the world. And just so that we can, again, sort of put this in context, because, I always like to talk about the science here. And people think that is so radical. But there was a neuroscientist called Dr. Carl Pribram, the late Carl Pribram now, who did this experiment back in the 50s, believe it or not. He was trying to figure out where memory is. So he had this horrible experiment with rats, and this is horrible for anybody who's into animal rights. What they did is they taught these animals a run, complicated maze. Then they systematically removed parts of these poor rats' brains. And it was, horrendous experiment. It demonstrated one thing: no matter how much brain they removed, the rats would stagger along, but they could still remember this run. And he suddenly realized, consciousness, memory cannot be housed within the brain. It's somewhere else. And that's what you guys are really talking about, that I find so interesting and is part of what I look at, is the idea that consciousness isn't in here. It's out there in the world, and we are tapping into it. And so when we start thinking about things that way, then the idea of energy medicine, of being able to see energy, of being able to correct energy in someone else, starts to make sense. So let me get a little bit further into the 5 elements, and let's explore a little bit how that overlaps a bit with some of the work I'm doing with the power of 8. So tell us, Donna, this is an old ancient, it's, as you say, it's traditional Chinese medicine. So how does that figure into your work?
It's just a natural backdrop to everything, because one of the wonderful things about the 5 elements, and I always think of them also as the 5 rhythms, that everybody has a rhythm, and all the seasons have a rhythm, and everything. I mean, it's just such a logical process. Of course, it's scientific, And I want to say one more thing. Somebody back before him was Einstein. I mean, he won the big prize for saying basically energy is all there is, and somehow we left him behind, which is amazing and nuts. But anyway, it is like I had a practice for 23 years before I went on the road at all, and it was just a natural thing that when somebody came in, I mean, yes, everybody has all the meridians, everybody has all the chakras, everybody has all these different, we actually work with 9 different energy systems. Oh, and I have to interrupt myself because I'm also looking at a picture of you on my screen with a figure 8 next to you. And I just want to say that what we know is that figure 8 energy that binds all the energy systems together. So it's just, it really speaks to us loud. No matter, I mean, every energy system communicates with every other. But what I was saying before, when I had my practice, when somebody would come on my table and I'd say, oh, well, they're an earth element. So, and suddenly, I mean, it would just automatically help you to look at the meridians that worked with that element and understand that their thought process was different than a fire element or a wood element, or the thought process was different. And everybody can have a more positive thought process, but everybody's thought process is different. So that we all know that if you marry somebody and find out, what are they thinking of? How can they possibly be saying that? Can't they see? Well, no, they can't, because in some ways we are limited by our own process, the way we process thought and the way we see things and feel things and think things. But when you know that, it gives you an extraordinary way of being able to communicate with the other and have immediate empathy and sympathy and compassion for the other who is thinking different, because none of us can help it, although we're all evolving to be able to encompass the whole. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so if somebody came to my table and I said before an earth, I'd say, well, their meridians are stomach and spleen. And say the person was, well, if they came as an earth element, I'd know that their body wasn't metabolizing everything the way they ought to. So, and then I would work with that metabolization and spleen. For myself, for instance, I am half earth and half fire, and a smidgen of metal. A smidgen of metal, but earth and fire. And so whatever is your strength on that element is also your vulnerability, because that's what your growth, you're going to grow from your element and start encompassing others. And so when I was young and I didn't metabolize vegetables or fruit, and the world says, well, you have to have vegetables and fruit, but if you can't metabolize them, they're not going to do any good for you. So if you start working on that meridian and on that element, then eventually you can metabolize those foods. So everything is always sort of a backdrop to all the rest of energy medicine.
Yes.
Was that clear?
It was totally clear. Absolutely. And it's basically, it's defining energy and systematizing energy. And when you think energy types, and when you think about this being an ancient system,
Yes.
What's really remarkable, acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine essentially got me on this journey, as did spiritual healing, because it was back in the late 90s, mid 90s, I guess, doing the work for our magazine, What Doctors Don't Tell You. I kept coming across very good studies, medical studies, scientific studies of things like acupuncture. And I kept thinking to myself, well, if you can stick pins in somebody along certain lines and completely change their, physiology, change their systems and their health, et cetera, that, and then also good studies about spiritual healing, that completely undermines how we think of the way the world works. So suddenly energy in the body becomes an entity that is really important. And you're talking about energy signatures. Now, we've found many energy signatures in our Power of 8 groups. And by the way, 8, just to let your listeners know what this whole thing is. I started, after doing a lot of big intention experiments, trying to purify water with thousands of people around the globe, studying it with scientists. One day I thought, maybe I'll put people in groups of 8 or so in a workshop and scale this whole thing down. And so that's what I did, thinking, and I told them, send healing intention to a member of the group with a health challenge. And I thought, it's going to be a mild effect, sort of like getting your back rubbed, a nice little mild effect. And that's not what happened. The next day, when people came back, they started reporting things like this, I have terrible depression and today it feels lifted. Excuse me. I have migraines and my head's clear today. I have cataracts and they're 80% better. And on and on and on it went. So this came about by total accident, me sort of saying to my husband, maybe I'll put them in groups of 8 or so and see what happens. And suddenly I was witness to these extraordinary healings. So what I've been doing ever since, now I've worked with thousands of groups, and I work with groups for a whole year in my Power of 8 Intention master classes. And we actually monitor what's going on with them and teach them and then observe them. And I see miraculous healings all the time. And it started convincing me of all kinds of things. Now, for me, it's really all about small groups and the extraordinary energy that is created between them. But that energy can heal anything. I mean, we had a woman last summer, after a 10-minute Power of 8 group, after a talk I gave, she and the whole audience got into little groups of 8. And we did that, and she got up out of her wheelchair. She was paralyzed from the neck down. Now, that's probably the most extraordinary case I've seen, but I'm sure, like you, I've seen amazing amazing miracle healings. So Dondi, tell me a little bit more about the 5 elements and how this helps in healing.
Yes, so we should probably say what the 5 elements are. They are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. And what Mom was talking about with the meridians is that there are different there are different parts of the body that each element is sort of governed by. And that becomes really, really interesting when you're looking at the physical health of the person. So for instance, in Western society, when you go to a doctor and you have some sort of ailment and it's a little mysterious and you don't know what's happening, but you know you don't feel good, the doctor is going to run tests, maybe blood tests, maybe they're going to give you a pill. Well, for doctors who work in Chinese medicine and the 5 elements, they're going to first figure out what your element is, because they know that if you are a water type, they could look to the kidneys and the bladder, because those are the 2 organs that sort of govern the water type element. If you're a wood element, they're going to look to the liver and the gallbladder. And so it's a clue they have, and it's a clue we have working in energy medicine to work physically, but also emotionally. Each element has a main emotion that they default to when they're stressed out. And this became really interesting for me when I was stressed out with my boyfriends as a teenager. And I would get so mad. I would get so mad, way more mad than my mom had ever gotten. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm so different than you, Mom. And I get so mad and I don't see you getting so mad. And she said, well, Dondi, you're a wood. Your main emotion is anger. You're going to lead with anger. And so for water, it's fear. For wood, it's anger. For fire, it's panic. For earth, it's worry. And for metal, it's grief. And when you know just that, I mean, we have all sorts of techniques, quick and easy and simple techniques to heal things like fear and grief. But just knowing that about yourself gives you a big clue into who you are, which I think goes back to your work connecting with our work and the bigger umbrella of who you are, who other people are, and then having compassion for that.
That's so interesting. And just have to ask, so how do you determine what somebody is?
Yeah, I'll let Mom jump in. Mom, I saw you. Did you want to jump in?
I'm always wanting to jump in, but I'll answer that question. You start noticing, how do they walk? How do they move? Like a water is much closer to the earth. They have this kind of slow, like a wave movement when they walk. A wood stomps more. A fire is more skippy up and down, and earth is this sway to the side, much more connected to the earth. And the metal is much more those. When I was in high school, I remember there was this practice where they'd say the best way to walk is to walk as if you have a string, to the heavens, and you're pulled like that. You're very straight. Well, that's a metal. And so, and the person who wrote that idea that we should all walk that way had to have been a metal, because they knew that was the way to walk, but that's the way to walk for that type. And you can also notice, their emotions. Are they kind of a fearful, pulled back person, or maybe just an internal person that pulls into themselves and gets nourished by that? Like a lot of poets and philosophers are water elements, but they're also another side of them is the baby. They want to be cared for, and they also can be playful. And the wood type is a pioneer. They're often leaders, and they have vision of what they're seeing, and this is how they process all their information. A fire is more into joy and natural love. It's just an ease for them. And earth has compassion, but they also worry. And the metal is yes, it's grief, but it's also a certain detachment, because they've gone up into their heads And if you can really recognize, I mean, this is really a little tiny piece of it, but if you can recognize that, gosh, you were born this way, that this is the sort of the rhythm you're meant to grow on and learn from, and then start as you expand and understand that other people are in their rhythm, you can start moving into other people's rhythms, and you grow and you evolve. And so when you start understanding the signs of looking at other people and seeing what they are, there's just no way you can judge. You cannot judge anybody, because that's our energy. That's our energy. That's not an intellectual decision we came to. It's our energy. And you know, our memories, our thoughts are not just in our brain. And yes, they're out here, but they're also in our chakras. They're in every organ in our body. I mean, they're everything and everywhere.
Absolutely. And we carry this. I mean, we see this with the work I do with the groups and the master classes. One of the things that I do is working with intention out of time, doing some time travel with it. And we find how much of that information, that intention is stuck, or those thoughts are stuck in the body and affecting today, even though it was yesterday. So yes. So what we're talking about, though, to bring this all essentially together is, you know, we talk about modern medicine as you know, this well-established system. We have to remember modern medicine is only 50 years old. You know, it came about with the advent of basically of antibiotics and steroids, life-saving drugs in certain circumstances. But we are talking about, you and I am talking about much older and well-established systems of medicine. These were around they've been around for thousands of years. For my work, I was really interested in trying to find some antecedents after I stumbled onto the healing effect of small groups. So I was looking, and many indigenous groups have used prayer circles, you know, many different disciplines. But in almost every instance, there's a shamanic type of leader. And that wasn't what was going on in these groups. In my Power of 8 groups, nobody's a leader. I show people what to do, but then it's the group effect. It's the extraordinary synergy in their energy, collective energy, that becomes the healer. So I started digging, and I came upon a Baptist preacher who was complaining about a mistranslation in the Bible. He was talking about the Acts, which are the part of the Bible that talk about Jesus has ascended, and this is about his disciples taking his work out to the world. And the preacher was basically saying, well, the translation we have in the King James Version says that Jesus told his disciples to pray with one accord, which is a very deadly way of saying what was in the original Hellenic Greek, which was a word called homothumadon, which is an adverb that means praying ecstatically with one voice. It's almost like, think of a Beethoven symphony, or, you know, some ecstatic piece of music. And so he was exhorting the apostles, pray together. When you do that, you will heal and you will be healed. That, honest to God, was the biggest antecedent I could see from these little, what is secular prayer circles. You know, I call it intention because it takes it out of any religious bias.
Yeah.
So that we've had Jews, we've had Muslims, we've had Christians, we've had atheists all come together. But I think this is what we start looking at, is an ancient system of demonstrating that when you essentially pray with one voice, that becomes an energy that is healing. to everyone involved. And that's what we've seen with our Power of Eight groups. Not only the recipient, but the senders are also healed, a kind of collective healing energy. So let me ask you too about, some ways in which you would use this. So you find out that somebody is air, for instance. So what would you do? How does that govern some of the things you would do? Do you do then energy healing with them? Let me put that to Donna.
Okay. First of all, just listening to you about the shaman and et cetera, two things come to mind. One is every one of us are healers. We are all healers. There's no way that we aren't. I've never seen anybody in all my life of working with zillions of people who couldn't do healing. Everybody can. We just got separated somewhere along the way with that awareness, with that knowledge, with that truth. But we are meant to do this. And let's see, there was a second thing you said. What was it? Now I don't know what it was.
Jesus, apostles, healing together in a group.
Oh, I know what it was. Just about this 8. It's really interesting. My husband is a metal, so we're very different, earth and fire, and he's a metal. And I just want to say that when we first got together, and for quite a long time, nobody thought we would ever make it. And we've been together, 43 years, I think. Nobody thought we would, because we were too different. How in the world could we be? We were not compatible. But what has happened, and what I think we're all meant to do, is when you learn of each other, it begins to expand you with the strengths of the other person. So, but one of the things he used to say, because he was a psychologist, or is a psychologist, and he led groups. And we had an argument early on when we started teaching classes together, because there's the small group has got to be only 8. It's got 8 people in a small group, because that's where everything can happen in a group of 8. And I thought it was, I said, well, why can't it be 9? Or why can't it be 10? He was adamant. He still is adamant to this day that it must be a group of 8 if you're going to have small groups. So
that is so funny. Would you know, Donna, we've put people into groups of 5, we put people into groups of 12. And I always like to say that 8, which I stumbled on, because literally I said to my husband, Brian, I don't know, I'll just put people into groups of 8 or so and have them send healing intention to someone else. There was no background, no sacred geometry, no anything behind that. And he's a good headline writer. So he said, I love it, the power of 8. And that was literally, we stumbled on the whole thing.
Yeah.
But we have put people into groups of 5 or 12, and it still works. 8 is a lovely Goldilocks figure, because it's not too small, it's not too big. And it also has, of course, all of those traditional connections. I mean, it's a lucky number in China. It has many, many implications and traditional values. But for me, essentially, it's the group. And what you were talking about before is so important. This thing about, you said you were so different, but your energy started melding. And that's what I see in these Power of 8 groups. I see, particularly as, this is what I started doing in 2015. I started putting people into groups just to study, to see what would happen, and I monitored them month by month by month. And almost all of them, the people who met regularly, had extraordinary healings, not just physical healings, but their lives got healed. And it was about that interplay of energy, not just receivers, but senders. And it is, I think that there are a lot of things about it, but as one of my students said, it was like a soup that changed my brain. I love that. Because it was like a soup. So we're talking about energy soup essentially together. And I watched this and I watch how people share energy. And while I have many stories, for instance, in our last group that's just finishing our last Power Big year-long course, you know, we had about 4 people overcome their cancer. We had a wonderful case of a woman who was deaf in one ear because of radiotherapy, because she had ear cancer. And after her group did intention for her, she realized that when the phone rang, she picked it up and put it to that right ear, and she could hear. It was amazing. My favorite one, though, is a group of people intending for one of their members whose house was right in line of fire with the California fires. And they all separately, when they were doing this intention together, they all had the image of a dome surrounding her house. And lo and behold, the fire, which was right in the line of her house, stopped. And the block ahead of her, you know, across the street, went around the house and carried on. And the firemen said it was like there was a dome over your house. It was so weird. And here was the other weird thing. They all had that image without talking about it of a dome going around the house. 3 of them had the same image. So it's that interesting sharing of energy that
exactly. It is amazing. And yes, I believe in the small group, but I've also seen in a group of thousands how when everybody has that, the energy begins to flow between them and build. I have seen energy being sent out, just like you're saying about the California fires. I've seen that. I have seen that many times of something miraculous just occurred. And then you begin to see that, yeah, it's a miracle, but it's real. It's so real what we can do with energy. Yeah.
No, you betcha. And it sort of brings me to this point where you said, and Dondi, please address this. You said anybody can heal. Now, this is an interesting thing for me because I feel like the more I've done this work, the more I realize how all of our extended human potential has been denied. You know, if you said to someone, what if I told you you could heal every aspect of your life? They would not believe it because they've been told all the time growing up from authority figures and now, of course, scientists, that that's not possible, that we are just this collection of electricity and chemical signaling. So we now see anybody can heal. So tell me a little bit more, Dondi, about the 5 elements and why that maximizes. You know, Donna talked a lot about finding different types. So why does this help so much? What would you change in the way that you heal then with it?
Okay, yes, I'd love to talk about that. And I have to also say that growing up with my mom, who believed and spoke openly that everyone can heal, was such a blessing to me, because when I came home from school, for instance, with a stomach ache, and I didn't know what to do, she would say, well, Dondi, use your hand. Use your hand to heal your stomach ache. Put it on your belly. Go backwards with circles on your belly. And she didn't sit there and say, Dondi, your hand is electromagnetic and the energy that comes from it matches up with your stomach. She just said, put your hand on your belly. And you can say that to children. You can say, your hands are healing. Put them on your belly. And yes, the power of thought and intention is incredible. And we have so many stories about our own healing circles and healing intention. But you can think about other things. You can watch TV if you're an 11-year-old girl, and you can put your hands on your belly and you can heal your stomach ache. So growing up with that awareness was incredible. When I became more and more intrigued by the 5 elements, which was only one of the energy systems that Mom was teaching my sister and I realized how specific it is that, well, Lynne, you mentioned earlier talking about metal elements, and Mom was talking about metals, and how the metal element type deals with grief. That is their main emotion that they go to under stress. And their organs are the lungs and the large intestine. And what do the lungs and the large intestine do every single day? They let go. They take in and they let go, whether it's food or breath. They take in and then they let go. And with grief, you're constantly taking in information. And then to heal, you have to find a way to let it go. And sometimes simple things that we read in books about just let it go, just breathe through it, that doesn't work for everyone. They don't even know how to start to breathe through it or let go. And so there are simple techniques that we teach for fear, for grief, for the lungs, for the large intestine. And so, yes, when you find out your element, you can have all sorts of healings, but it starts right away just by knowing your element and having the awareness that you are this energy being and that every cell on your body can heal, is healing. And again, when you show up as a healed human being, you're transferring that energy to other people just by showing up in a grounded way.
Oh, that's so interesting. And it sounds like the 5 elements is a really brilliant shortcut to learning, okay, what do I have to focus on, which is, a fast track. And I think that is what's so interesting and a crossover with both of our work, because people think you have to really suffer to get healed. You have to do all of this discipline stuff. You got to go into sweat lodges or crawl on your knees for years or do all of that stuff. And one thing that was really fascinating for me was, because we had these power bake groups and, people were healing, of course, the journalist, the investigator in me wanted to find out why. And I was lucky to be able to work with Life University that put their neuroscience department in my disposal. And so we hooked up. We had 7 groups of student volunteers. We put an EEG cap on a member of each of the Power of 8 groups to find out what was going on. And we found that very quickly they got into a state where certain parts of the brain, the part of the brain involved in feeling separate, like the parietal lobes, they sit right here and they are involved in making us feel like separate entities, and that's how we perceive life. We go through life. We don't feel oneness. We perceive our corporeal self as being separate. And that was dialed way down, as were the parts of the brain involved in worry, doubt, negativity. And so what these people were, these were brainwave signatures, just to get scientific for a second, that were almost identical to Buddhist monks involved in ecstatic prayer or Sufi masters doing chanting. So what fascinated me was an experience where people get out of their ordinary separate self and suddenly enter into a state of oneness. And if I were thinking about it, when you said, Donna and Dondi, both, about feeling this sense of energy and this connection throughout, to me, that feels like the real secret sauce in healing, is suddenly you don't feel separate. Suddenly you feel like you have this connection to all that is. Is that right, Donna?
Yes, that's right. That is exactly right. I mean, I shouldn't be around today. I mean, I was told way back in my 20s and 30s that I was going to die because I had multiple sclerosis and didn't walk. And I was getting tetany all over my body where sometimes I couldn't talk. And so something happened to me when I went to 5 different specialists, and that 5th specialist, when he said the same thing, there's nothing more we can do, all your organs are breaking down and you are aging very fast. And, I want to say to everybody, now I'm 77 and whatever happened then, turn that around a bit, because I love my life today. Aging is a much better thing than people think it is. It's
You
wonderful.
betcha.
I'd much rather be now than back then. But back then, it was this absolute knowing, oh, well, if they can't help me, I'll heal myself. That's exactly how it all began. And I did. And it was just figuring out the maze, but I had the basics. I had the basics of energy and the basics of the 5 elements. I just knew. And it's interesting. I knew about the 5 elements before. I never studied it with China or acupuncture. It's just when you work with energy, you begin to see these patterns and these ways of how energy moves and how it's different in one person than another. And here's another truth. All the meridians, all the chakras, all those things are the same. And we are also as unique as a thumbprint. So that how you individualize it becomes your healing modality. And so I don't remember where I was going. Where was I going?
You were getting there, girl. You were getting there. No, but you were talking about something so important, which is we have this extraordinary ability.
Absolutely.
And 2, we have individualities. And 3, we have extraordinary capacity to heal that continuously gets denied when we get into a place in a state of oneness.
Yes, and one of my favorite exercises that we always do at the end of one of our classes is everybody in the room, opens up their arms to the heavens and just stands in that place, and you begin to be transformed as you pick up information, energy, connect with the oneness of the world and the universe. I mean, amazing things happen. And as you pull your hands then back into your own heart chakra and how that energy moves all through your body and is healing. You do feel at one. Would you say that, Dondi? Don't you feel at one at the end of that?
Yes.
And when I was doing healing with myself, that was the thing. I was reaching out, trying to find people who had multiple sclerosis all over the world, saying, there's something you can do. Don't believe them. Don't take the medicine, because the medicine interferes with your own processes. You've got to get things purified so that you can do some healing. And that's been my journey. And if I had my druthers, it would be to every human being on the planet knew that they could heal themselves. And with the basis of something like the 5 elements, one of the things that Dondi has done is she sometimes puts on a sort of like a one-woman show where she steps into the field of each of the elements, and everybody can recognize that person, often as themselves or their partner or their best friend or their child. And it's just such an education to learn about ourselves more than almost anything else, that the energies in us and energies that then can move out through the earth. I'll just tell you one really interesting thing. Many years ago, I was working with a client who really wanted to learn how to send energy, because she had a child who was across the country who she had lost custody of. And the child had a lot of ailments, and she just wanted to be able to send energy. Now and she was when she knew her child was sick, we could send it through. She could just send it, and the child would start getting well. But then with her other child, who she wasn't for one reason or another as connected with, she had a hard time sending it. So I'd say, well, you know what? The earth, we tend to think that energy moves through the air better than any way, but when she laid on the earth, it just speeded up, and she could reach her other child who wasn't as receptive and do healing with him. And so it's an amazing thing, and you never get to the end of the miraculousness of it all. And I want everyone to learn.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing. And I think, again, that's a crossover of our work, which is, you know, people, as I say, think that they've got to walk through glass in order to learn how to have a mystical experience or an altered state or a state of healing. But, you know, I saw it again with a bunch of students at Life University. You know, all they had was a short piece from me training them in the very basics of it. And essentially, it was a fast track to an altered state, to the miraculous. And what you're talking about, too, is a fast track to the miraculous. We have this capacity, and we just need to relearn. And that's what you're doing. That's what we're doing.
Yes.
So
yes,
I want to see, come on, Dondi, let's show us what one of those types is. Come on, we want to see it. You're an actress as well as a teacher. Can you do one?
Well, you know what's really interesting about the elements you asked earlier, Lynn, how can somebody tell what they are, tell what their family members are, because everything opens up when you start to figure out what people's elements are. And each element has a very different way of speaking. And so I think, you know, I do full acts of the elements, but just the voice. So when you have a water element, they kind of drone on, they kind of talk like this. It's a little bit slower. They're very deep thinkers. Sometimes they get depressed. Whereas a wood is very choppy and they're very, very direct and they want to know exactly what is going on and how to get from one place to another. And they're going to look at all situations and try to fix them. And then the fire is so full of love and they just love everybody and everything is so colorful and wonderful and the flowers blooming on the tree. Oh, and then the other day my mom called me and she was telling me, Dondi, the wind is so beautiful today. And I can see everything scooching across my porch. And then the earth is really sing-songy. And it's like talking to a child. And hello, everybody. I'm so happy you're watching me and Mom and Lynn today. And then the metal has more of a whisper in their voice. And they're a person of very few words.
That was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Now that summed it up perfectly. Oh, I love that, Donnie. We've got lots of people asking a lot of questions. Should we take some questions now?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let me see what we've got here. Okay. Right. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is let me ask you, Donna, are the elements tied to the zodiac signs in any way?
Well, it's really interesting in a loose kind of way because, and I'll tell you the difference. And the zodiac is your moment of birth, whereas the elements, it can be any time from conception to 3 months after birth. So it is the moment that you claim life, where there's already a resonance and you feel the energy inside the womb or once you're out. Like in many cultures, they don't name the baby until 3 months have passed, because somewhere in there, the baby is to claim themselves and then they can have their name.
Ah, okay. Very interesting. Okay. And let me just get one. Okay, Dondi, how about this one for you? You say, and then I'll answer it too. You both say everyone can heal. A lot of healing paths speak about clearing the past emotional pain before you can heal. What if you have difficulty in revealing and releasing those experiences in your life? Can you still be a healer?
Well, I say yes. I have not cleared every emotional trauma from my past. I still work through them all the time, and I have incredible healing capabilities because my mom told me early on and showed me early on how to be in touch with them and how to trust the power of my hands in healing. So I don't think that any human being is going to get to the end of where we were hurt in the past or where we were triggered or what our parents did to us. But you can absolutely heal through that. You can clear it while you're healing. It can all work together. And it really becomes a beautiful journey. And the journey of getting over trauma while you're learning how to work with your energies is so much easier. It is so much more just sort of welcome in your heart as part of the journey. It's not the, oh, I have to take the next 5 years to get over what that person did to me. It all comes together as part of the healing. I hope that makes sense.
And,
Absolutely.
and it's a part of the clearing. I mean, just being on this path begins to clear a lot of stuff. And again, if you know the 5 elements, you have that, you like if you had been harmed by somebody. When you suddenly see through the lens of the elements, you see, oh, I get it. What that person was about, that really wasn't about me at all, you know? And so it's helpful. It's helpful. No, you can't sit on a mountain for 9 years and then say, okay, now I'm ready to heal, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, from our work, we find when you say clearing the past emotional pain, as I say, we have certain systems of using group intention to do that, to go back and deal with that, not change what happened, but change your emotional response to what happened.
Yeah.
And I see this over and over again with people who have had the biggest traumas, everything from sexual abuse to to being told they were stupid in something, to being, belittled or screamed at, whatever it was that's held them back. Using the group to go back and do healing intention ends up healing their lives. And I see that all the time. So not only are they the healer, but something about working with a group becomes almost like a legitimatizer. It enables them to let go of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
we're getting lots of gorgeous comments. Could the elements be in disorder in one person, Donna? Recently, I had a lot of domestic disasters related to water in my houses and the houses I live in.
So what was the question again? The question was,
could the elements be in disorder in one person?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Do you want to speak
absolutely.
to that a little bit?
Like if you are a strong water, or if you sit opposite, okay, sometimes that's the healing. Say if you're a fire element, too much heat, and water can put the fire out. I mean, the element, we are related to everything on earth and in the universe. And so sometimes, yes, it comes in the form of the actual element in earth that helps. And sometimes it just helps you to see and to get it, and you get insight. Oh my God. And so I think it's always helpful. Yes.
Fantastic. Now for me, somebody asked a question about yesterday. They said, was a peaceful inauguration. Wasn't that the intention of Sunday? Remember I talked about doing these big intention experiments. A number of the intention experiments that I've done most recently, the peace intention experiments, have brought together polarized groups. So I did this back in 2010 for the 10th anniversary of 9/11. I put together both clusters of Arabs as well as Americans and Westerners, and we did an intention to lower violence in Afghanistan. And I noticed that the Africans, the Muslims were sending love to the Americans, and the Americans were writing about how forgiving and healing this was. And there was this extraordinary back and forth. And so we did it again with Arabs and Israelis, doing an intention to lower violence in Jerusalem. And again, we saw, the Arabs saying to the Israelis, your God is my God, and the Israelis saying, we love you, brothers and sisters, and extraordinary things going back and forth. So we did it Sunday, and I brought together, we did an intention for a peaceful inauguration, and I brought together Republicans, Democrats, African Americans, a representative of the police. We had somebody who believed the whole election was a conspiracy. We had someone else who was a former jihadi who is now working to heal terrorists. And we had people all together, and everybody was sending love to each other. So my answer was to this question is, yeah, we did an intention for a peaceful inauguration. Did we do this yesterday? Who knows, might just have been the 25,000 police that were there too, keeping everybody safe. But it's almost become immaterial what the target is. What seems to be the most important thing is participating in a group. And that seems to be the element, participating in a group intention together seems to be the element that helps the heart leap across the fence. So yes. I would say for me, the target now has become less important than just getting people who don't agree with each other to come together and to do this together. And so that's a method of healing a polarized heart.
Yes, I'm also, my husband David and I are also a part of a 5 group that meets every 2 weeks and talks about all of that and sends energy. So we were also healing that polarized divide. And I was really, something sweet and wonderful happened yesterday. Someone who was very bitter and angry, a Republican who had been interviewed by the TV station before, he became part of my focus. If I focused on him, it was going to change other people. And he was and he believed in the conspiracy theory, and he was angry. Well, after the inauguration, it reminded me of you talking about the soup. What was that quote you said? That
it was like the intention was like a soup, or the group effect was like a soup that changed my brain.
Yeah. Well, he said, well, I've got hope again. He said, listening to Biden's speech, it was like a soothing bowl of grits. Now, in the United States, grits is what they eat in the South a lot. And a soothing bowl of grits. And I thought, oh, that was good.
Oh, that is so great. That is so great. I love that. Dondi, here's one for you. Like you explained, having a stomach ache and rubbing your belly, asked Susan, what would you suggest to do to help young kids with their anxiety, which often shows itself in somatic ways?
Oh my gosh, there are so many techniques for anxiety. Thank you for asking that. I don't know if we have time to show a technique, Lynn, or I can tell people where the resources are, because we do have resources on YouTube. And if to the person who asked this question, you can take your kids there. Do we have time, Lynn? Or
yeah, go ahead and show a quick technique. Yeah,
Mom, would you like to show I see you raising your hand. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Dondi, show what your young son does when he gets anxious, because he came up with it himself.
Oh yes, well, I'll show the one my mom teaches there. And Mom, please jump in, because this is your technique. And you, Mom, in fact, just show, can you talk about neurovasculars a little bit?
Okay.
And these are just, don't let the big word scare you, everybody. It's just 2 little points here on the forehead. And Mom can talk about the neurovascular.
Okay. And then I want you to say about Tiernan. Well, I think everybody at one time or another in their lives have thrown their hands up to their forehead and said, oh my God. I always think of these as the oh my God points because people do it instinctually. I mean, you're not taught. Nobody has told you why this works or why you would do it. And now in this modern time, as soon as you put your hand up there, you take your hand away because, well, why are you doing that? But why you're doing that is when you get stressed out, when you get anxious, when you get upset, when you get worried, the blood leaves your forebrain and goes into your body for the fight, flight, or freeze response. It's automatic. We evolved that way so that we could get away from danger, or we could beat somebody up, or we could freeze. And freeze was very important in ancient times because when you freeze and literally you can't move and you can't think and you can't talk and you're not even breathing, all of the processes, the physical processes in the body go way down, and you can't even be smelled by some animals in the wild. So there was a reason that was a part of our evolution. You can't be seen, you shrunk your aura in and you're not seen as well. And so that was really an important part of our past. Well, when you put your hand up to your forehead, your hand is electromagnetic, and so is your blood, and you draw the blood back up into your forebrain. And if you kept it there, you will get clearer and clearer and clearer, and you'll be lifted out of anxiety and upset and worry. And there are several ways to do it. You can put one hand in the back and one hand in the front. You can put one hand on your heart and one hand here. You can put one thumbs here and fingers here. All these ways to draw the blood back up, and you get balanced out. And okay. Now, Dondi, what does Tiernan do?
Well, my son, when he was 5 or 6, I was trying to teach him different exercises, and he liked them okay, but they weren't really speaking his language as a 5 or 6-year-old. So he would come up to the neurovasculars when he was upset, and he'd put his hands here, and he'd put his thumbs in his temples, and then he'd turn it into a spider. So he'd do spider. And that made sense to him as a little boy who loved spiders. There was another word he used. We live very close to the border with Mexico, and he was learning Spanish words, and hola, which is hello, he was learning, and he'd come up to his neurovasculars and he called it the hola exercise. Hello, hello, and he was saying hello to himself and his grounding and also his heart, and he called it the hola. So you can work with kids all the time and give them the terms that work for them, but coming up to these places that do bring blood back to the forebrain and do help you think clearly again, and you can make it fun for the kids.
I love that. I think that's so great. I think those are beautiful and simple ways of doing things. Now, Joy has said, I do acupuncture and Reiki. This is for me. I found that with every session I did for another, I myself got a healing, and someone else said the same thing too. And that brings me to something really important that I found with Power of 8 groups. And one reason the group seems to work so well is it almost doesn't matter whether you're sending or receiving. I've seen people get miraculously healed when thay've been focusing on someone else, or they've got a dream job, or they've had a financial windfall when they stopped focusing on themselves. And I started looking at the science of altruism, and it's, altruism is like a bulletproof vest. People who do things for other people live longer, happier, healthier lives. And I'm sure you, Donna and Dondi, have both seen this. When you do healing, you are constantly refreshed and healed too. That's part of the whole oneness exercise. It just doesn't really matter.
Yes. When I had my practice, and sometimes I'd start working at 6 in the morning and go till 8 at night, I'd have more energy at the end of the day than beginning, because you're a part of the healing too. You're getting healed as well. And sometimes when I hear of a practitioner has gotten tired through the day, I say, oh, okay, it's like they're either worried that they're not doing it right or something like that, an interference comes in. But everybody can know and be taught that, gosh, if you do healing, it's good for you too. Absolutely. And I'd like to say one more thing. And one of the things about the elements, different elements are more tuned into yourself, and some elements are more tuned into others. And like all 5 elements are then divided in 2 between yin and yang. And so when it's yin, you're more attuned to yourself. And when you're more yang, you're attuned to the other. So there are ways, simple ways, like Tiernan, Dondi's son, changed the exercise. And I always tell people, if it doesn't quite sit with you, change it, make it yours, make it become yours, so that like I had a student who took a lot of classes, who could not for the life of her stop negative energy from coming in on her. And so I was watching her one day, and I realized she had so much commotion in her own aura. I said, well, just begin to swim through your aura. It doesn't matter if you can't see it or feel it. Just start swimming through it and start building like that dome for the people in the fire. Build that with your own energy, and then let it go. Let it go, because you're taken care of. You're safe. And it really worked for her, and her life changed. And there's just such simple things that you can do energetically. And
absolutely. And that whole idea of letting it go and trusting the process is a lot of what we do with Power of 8 groups too. And Marion, I'll take this last question, and then we've been on for quite a while, everybody, but I'm going to let you know where you can get more information from both of us, from all of us. But Marion asked, is there a quick way we can, or what are the most, here it is, Anki has said, what are the most important points of the platform method or working with intention? Well, the most important thing is having a group. And you can have a group online, as all of in my masterclass, people meet, I put people into groups for a year, and they meet every week for a year virtually. I have groups that have been meeting for years, and they've never actually physically met each other, but this has become their extraordinary intention family. So I think number 1 is a group, and number 2 is just telling the universe what you want. A lot of times people don't clarify. They'll say, I want to be rich, when they actually mean, I want more time with my grandkids, or I want another job. They don't tell the universe what they want. So I think that's it. But the group, if I were to say one thing, it is just creating that group and meeting regularly with them, and you will see miracles happen. So Donna and Dondi, thank you so much for coming. Tell everybody about your upcoming course with the 5 elements and what you're doing.
Oh, I would love to. So we have an online 5 elements course coming. It will be a journey that we do as a group for 5 weeks together, and it's going to launch in the summertime. And the way that you can be in the loop to find out more about that is through the edenmethod.com, edenmethod.com. And if you want to find out more about your element, you can take a quiz at a website called learnthefiveelements.com. And the quiz takes about 4 or 5 minutes, and you can find out about your element. And we have lots of videos on YouTube, and we're easy to find under Eden Method or Eden Energy Medicine. And Lynn, this has been so great. Thank you.
Yes, it has been great. Dondi, I wanted to ask you, do we have radiant circuits going right now?
We do. We have a couple of free classes. If you go to edenmethod.com, and you'll see right away the free classes will come up. So lots of free resources. So don't fret if you're on a tight budget right now, you will find something for you.
There's so much free. We give so much free, but radiant circuits might interest people because especially during this time when you are alone and maybe you can't connect, radiant circuits help you find the radiance inside you, the energy of joy and connectedness and awe and wonder and gladness and appreciation and gratitude and just joy and love. And they are energies. Those are energies. And we have a couple of classes that are free right now.
Yes, we have an hour-long free class on the radiant circuits, and you can find it.
And you can go to YouTube.
Wonderful.
And I really
and tell us that URL again, that website.
edenmethod.com and learnthefiveelements.com. But Eden Method, you'll find the free classes and go and enjoy. And that's where you can sign up for, you can sign up for our list if you want to find out more about classes we have in the future and different events.
Thank you, guys. And for me,
you,
I've got a Power of 8 Intention Masterclass that starts February 6th. And that is the big course where I run it once a year. I teach people over 6 sessions. I have follow-up sessions. I put you into groups for a year and you work with your intention family. So you can find out more on my website, lynnmctaggart.com. And for those who don't want to take a course with me, we also have our new community on lynnmctaggart.com where you can set up a Power of 8 group for free. And we also have a lot of free events, of free resources, information about setting up a Power of 8 group and more. So check it out. Check out the Power of 8 Intention Masterclass 2021 about to kick off. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. And thank you, everybody, for listening, for asking questions. And be well, be safe, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.